What if you held a message from an ancient forgotten world in your hands, but couldn't read a single word? For 1,000 years, the most astounding civilization the ancient world had ever seen flourished in the shadow of the Himalayas. They built cities like Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa, cities that dwarfed the capitals of Mesopotamia and Egypt, cities where the average resident enjoyed sanitation that wouldn't be seen again in Europe until the Roman Empire. Imagine this. 4,500 years ago, a society spanning an area the size of Western Europe, a society of 500,000 people, existed in perfect, peaceful harmony. They were brilliant engineers, precise artisans, and skilled traders. And then they simply vanished. But they left something behind. A stubborn, tantalizing clue. A whisper from the past, etched onto polished stone, copper plates, and tiny clay tablets. We call it the Indus Valley script. Every symbol is a key we can't turn, a door we can't open. For nearly a century, archaeologists, linguists, and cryptographers, some of the brightest minds on Earth, have tried to break this code. They've pored over the inscriptions, run them through supercomputers, and debated every single stroke. And every time, they've been met with silence. This isn't just an academic puzzle. This is the enduring frustration and captivating allure of history's greatest unsolved mystery. Crack this script, and we won't just read a message. We will resurrect an entire civilization. We will finally hear the voices of the people who built the first great planned cities on Earth. Our journey into this mystery begins not with an archaeologist's trowel, but with a railroad spike. It's the 1850s. The British Empire is driving its railway network across the Indian subcontinent. Near the town of Harappa, construction workers find a seemingly endless supply of perfectly fired, durable bricks, an easy quarry for their new rail bed. They didn't know it, but they were dismantling a 3,000-year-old metropolis to build a modern train line. They were literally erasing history, brick by perfect brick. Dr. Jonathan Reed, archivist, British Museum, or other expert. They treated it as a quarry, thousands of years of history, and they just saw free building material. They had no context. When they started finding these bizarre, small stone seals, perfectly carved, unlike anything they'd seen, they were just curiosities, trinkets. One railway engineer even gave a few to his friends as paperweights. It would take another 70 years for the true scale of what they'd uncovered to sink in. In the 1920s, formal excavations began at Harappa, and then a few hundred miles south at Mohenjo-Daro, the Mound of the Dead. What they unearthed redefined human history. Prior to this, historians believed that Mesopotamia and Egypt were the twin cradles of civilization. The Indus Valley forced a rewrite. Here was a third, equally vast and in some ways far more advanced civilization. The cities were a shock to the system. Forget the winding, chaotic alleys of ancient Babylon. Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro were laid out on a perfect grid plan, oriented to the cardinal directions. Every city block was uniform. Every house had access to a revolutionary system of drains and wells. Imagine that. In 2500 BC, a clean, orderly city where wastewater flowed away from the houses through meticulously built conduits. That level of urban planning speaks to a society of incredible organization, discipline, and, crucially, centralized control. But this control wasn't what historians expected. Professor Arya Sharma, linguistics and archaeology or other expert.
In Egypt, you have the pyramids. In Mesopotamia, ziggurats and war monuments. In the Indus Valley, nothing. No colossal statues of kings, no giant temples dedicated to a supreme god. The houses were all relatively the same size. There's a remarkable lack of hierarchy compared to their contemporaries. This civilization appears to have been defined not by the powerful few, but by the orderly and prosperous many.
And so, the greatest puzzle began to take shape. How did a civilization of this scale, this complexity, manage its trade, its massive population, and its uniform standards across hundreds of thousands of square miles? They must have relied on a sophisticated system of record-keeping, of communication, of law. They must have had a written language. They did, and it sits before us now on these seals. 40 characters, 50 characters, sometimes just 3. Too short to give us context, yet too specific to be ignored. This is the script, the true treasure of the Indus, and the source of our deepest frustration. We have the letters, we know the alphabet existed, but the silent language of a lost world refuses to speak. What did they call themselves? What gods did they worship? What caused their end? The answers lie here. And until we crack this code, the Indus Valley will remain an epic tale of human achievement without a narrator. The mystery of the Indus script is inseparable from the mystery of the Indus people themselves. To understand why their writing is so important, we have to look closer at the world it was meant to describe. Imagine stepping out of the chaos of ancient Babylon with its harsh laws and towering temples dedicated to warring gods, and into Mohenjo-Daro. It would have felt like arriving in a different universe. Professor Arya Sharma, linguistics and archaeology, returning expert. We see this incredible uniformity across the entire civilization, from the coast of the Arabian Sea up to the foothills of the Himalayas, a territory larger than modern Pakistan. They used the exact same system of weights and measures. The bricks they laid in Harappa are the same size as the bricks they laid in Mohenjo-Daro, 1,000 miles away. This kind of standardization requires an absolutely mind-boggling level of centralized authority and planning. Dr. Jonathan Reed, archivist, British Museum, returning expert. But here's the puzzle that keeps archaeologists up at night. Where is the power? In Egypt, you see it in the pharaoh's burial. In China, you see it in the elaborate tombs of the Shang kings. In the Indus Valley, there are no grand palaces, no kingly monuments, no caches of gold jewelry buried with a high priest. The largest, most sophisticated building they had was the Great Bath, a public works project, perhaps for ritual cleansing, accessible to everyone. This wasn't an oppressive military dictatorship. If a great king ruled this land, his name, his face, his deeds, they are all absent from the archaeological record. Instead of monuments to vanity, they built monuments to convenience and hygiene. We've uncovered sophisticated granaries for storing communal food, and most impressively, the world's first widespread organized sewer system. Every house had access to fresh water. Every house had a drain connecting to the main sewer line running beneath the street. Think about that. A civilization that prioritized public health and order over personal glorification. It's almost a socialist utopia 4 millennia too early. Without kings, without massive armies, how did they maintain order and stability for 1,000 years? The sheer lack of evidence for conflict is staggering. While Mesopotamian cities were surrounded by massive fortifications and filled with weapons hordes, the Indus Valley cities were built on a foundation of trade and trust. They were a civilization of merchants. We find their unmistakable seals, their identity cards and trademarks, all the way in modern-day Iraq, in ancient Sumerian trading ports. We know they were exporting cotton, timber, beads, and gold. The Sumerian texts refer to a rich, advanced civilization called Maluha, which we now believe is the Indus Valley. The seals acted as bills of lading, proof of ownership. A trader would take a lump of clay, press the seal onto it, and seal the knot of a bale of cotton. When it arrived in Sumer, if the seal was intact, the goods hadn't been tampered with. It was the ancient world's version of blockchain security. And here, in these simple administrative tools, is where the script lives. Seen, a collection of various seals laid out in a museum display. The vast majority of the inscriptions we have are not epic poems, not laws etched into stone tablets, but these tiny, pragmatic administrative markers. They are the business cards and transaction records of a merchant society. Look closely at these seals. You see a clear image, perhaps the mythical unicorn or a fierce water buffalo. This is the logo or the clan symbol. And above the image, running from right to left, are the symbols, the script. They are brief. 5 signs, maybe 10 at most. They might be the owner's name, their profession, or the quantity of goods. In the context of a trade agreement, that's all they needed to say. But for the modern code breaker, that brevity is a prison. The contradiction is profound. A civilization of enormous scale, with an administrative language so compact it almost defies definition. We've cataloged about 400 unique symbols. That's too many for a simple alphabet, like English, which has 26 letters. But it's too few for a purely logographic system, like Chinese, which has thousands of characters, each representing a word or idea. This puts the Indus script right in the linguistics Goldilocks zone of trouble. It's likely a logosyllabic system, a mix. Some symbols represent whole words, like a picture of an ox. Others represent sounds, like syllables. If the script is the voice of this civilization, then its content is not a royal proclamation, but a series of quick, quiet transactions, a merchant tally, a warehouse receipt, a prayer whispered on a riverbank. They were a society built on order, equality, and commerce. And the script was the engine of that commerce. To decipher it is to understand the very philosophy that allowed this unprecedented peaceful empire to thrive. But for all their genius in engineering, their language has proven to be an engineering challenge that has stumped humanity for 100 years. This is where the detective work truly begins. If the script is the voice of this civilization, then its content is not a royal proclamation, but a series of quick, quiet transactions. A merchant tally, a warehouse receipt, a prayer whispered on a riverbank. They were a society built on order, equality, and commerce, and the script was the engine of that commerce. To decipher it is to understand the very philosophy that allowed this unprecedented peaceful empire to thrive. But for all their genius in engineering, their language has proven to be an engineering challenge that has stumped humanity for 100 years. This is where the detective work truly begins. To understand the frustration of the Indus script, you need to understand the keys that unlocked every other ancient language. For Egyptian hieroglyphs, we had the Rosetta Stone. For Mesopotamian cuneiform, we had the Behistun inscription. These were bilingual or trilingual texts, the same message written in both a known language and a dead one. They were the universal translators, the dictionaries of the ancient world. The Indus script has no Rosetta Stone. The challenge of the Indus script can be broken down into 3 linguistic walls, 3 insurmountable obstacles that have thwarted every attempt at a full decipherment. And then there's the final, radical theory, a kind of archaeological heresy that argues the script is not actually a script at all. Decades of failed attempts have left behind a graveyard of decipherment claims. In the 1920s, the Jesuit scholar Father Henry Harris declared the script was a Proto-Dravidian language, translating symbols to mean phrases like 6 stars, sun, fire, light of God. But his methods were criticized as too subjective. Later, Soviet researchers used early computer analysis in the 1960s, attempting to find patterns in the symbol order. They too failed to reach a consensus, proving that even a supercomputer couldn't overcome the brevity problem. Every few years, a headline screams, "Indus code cracked," and every time, the claim withers under the relentless academic scrutiny of the 3 walls of silence. But the silence is also a magnet. It attracts the very best minds, pushing the boundaries of technology and linguistics to solve a puzzle that is a mile wide and an inch deep. And then there's the final, radical theory, a kind of archaeological heresy that argues the script is not actually a script at all. Decades of failed attempts have left behind a graveyard of decipherment claims. In the 1920s, the Jesuit scholar Father Henry Harris declared the script was a Proto-Dravidian language, translating symbols to mean phrases like 6 stars, sun, fire, light of God. But his methods were criticized as too subjective. Later, Soviet researchers used early computer analysis in the 1960s, attempting to find patterns in the symbol order. They too failed to reach a consensus, proving that even a supercomputer couldn't overcome the brevity problem. Every few years, a headline screams, "Indus code cracked," And every time, the claim withers under the relentless academic scrutiny of the three walls of silence. But the silence is also a magnet. It attracts the very best minds, pushing the boundaries of technology and linguistics to solve a puzzle that is a mile wide and an inch deep. We have reached the limits of traditional archaeology. The dirt has yielded all its secrets. To finally give voice to the people of Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro, we must now turn to the one tool they never had: artificial intelligence. The future of the Indus script will be decided not in the ruins, but in the algorithms. The limitations of the human eye and traditional linguistics forced a revolution. If the physical clues, the seals, the tablets couldn't break the code, maybe the abstract language of mathematics could. Archaeology and code breaking have entered the age of artificial intelligence. This computational evidence delivers a stunning blow to the not-a-language theory. The patterns are too strong, too organized to be mere emblems or political crests. The Indus people were writing. The machine has confirmed the mystery. But what were they writing? The computer has brought us back to the Dravidian hypothesis, first proposed almost a century ago. The statistical structure of the script mirrors the syllabic nature of early Dravidian languages. But there is a modern tangible clue, too. Archaeological evidence suggests the people of the Indus were moving south and east as their civilization declined. Today, a small, isolated Dravidian language called Brahui is still spoken by communities in modern-day Balochistan, right near the ancient Indus heartland. Researchers are now using computational models to map the sound values of Brahui back onto the structural rules identified by the AI in the Indus script. It is a massive, high-stakes matching game. Why does this silent language hold such power over the modern mind? Because deciphering the Indus script would not simply fill a gap on a historical timeline. It would fundamentally rewrite human history. If the script confirms the Dravidian link, it proves that this vast, peaceful, sophisticated culture was not destroyed by an invading Aryan force, as once widely believed. It suggests a process of migration and cultural continuity that makes the history of the entire Indian subcontinent richer and far more complex. If we crack this code, we won't just get names and dates. We will get the literature of a lost world. We will know their philosophy, the laws that allowed a city without kings to thrive for 1,000 years. We will know their gods. Did they worship the figure found meditating on a seal, perhaps the earliest depiction of Shiva? We will know their science, the equations that built their flawless drains. The message is still here, clutched in our hands, waiting for its reader. It is a testament to an entire civilization that chose sanitation over sculpture and order over ostentation. The brightest minds have been baffled, but the work continues. The silent language is beginning to whisper. It reminds us that the greatest untold stories of humanity are not the ones lost to time, but the ones still locked within the code.